Hello, 41st day, first video. I'm going to start with a confession. I have a prejudice about language. And that prejudice is usually an ugly thing, and maybe so. That's why I call it a confession. But I very much prefer the Germanic side of the English language, and I care. I would go out of my way to use small words and Germanic words. And I'm not saying this is a good thing. I just figured that I might as well tell you this. And that's one of the reasons that in class vocabulary, I only did that 1 week. I ran through that exercise of class vocabulary, and I told you that I would not accept a word that was bigger than 3 syllables. Now the reason I did that, I don't think I told you then, but I'm ready to tell you now. The reason that I did that is if, you know, kids and adults too, they'll spot a big word and they'll say, oh, that's a big word, I don't know that word. There we go, I've got a word whose meaning I don't know, which was the bottom line. I mean, in class vocabulary, that's the way it's supposed to work. You notice a word whose meaning you don't know. Well, there are thousands of them like that. And if they're bigger than 3 syllables, the likelihood of them being from Latin is very high. It doesn't guarantee it because it's 3 syllables or less that it's going to be from some other language. It's not guaranteed. But I just think the etymology, it becomes much more interesting if you've got the smaller words. It takes more looking. You don't spot them as quickly. But you come up with a more interesting etymology. English has got a vast, not a vast, but a majority of English words come from Latin. And some people will actually use that as an argument that English is a Romance language. Well, it is not. English is a Germanic language loaded with vocabulary from the Romance languages. Okay, well, I had said I was going to leave this in the last video. I'm not leaving it. I'm going back to it. I mentioned that English can be considered almost schizophrenic, and that there's 2 sides to it. There are alternate vocabularies, and a famous example of this is, I guess it was done by Sir Walter Scott. He pointed it out, I think. But if you could talk about a peasant or a man eating a meal on a stool at a board, eating swine flesh or cow flesh. Now, that's pretty crude. But that would all be Germanic. Now, if you take that and say that using the French words or the Latinate words, you come up with, let's say, a person dining, sitting in a chair at a table at a banquet, dining on pork or beef. Well, those words, almost every word I used comes from either French or Latin. There is that difference, so I will leave it now, almost. Sir Walter Scott, his book Ivanhoe. When I was in 9th grade, if you can imagine that, me a 9th grader, we read that. At least we read a simple version of it. And I must have been very prone to influence then, impressionable at that time, because I remember it clearly. And he laid out, in Ivanhoe, it's historical fiction, he lays out what England was like when there were the Angles, or the Anglo-Saxons and the Normans, and that conflict between the two. I recommend it. It's been made into a couple movies. The original is fine. It's a fine read. All right, that behind us. Now, back in linguistics, each language has its own vocabulary. I usually don't even write that down because it's so obvious. If you're going to learn a foreign language, you are going to have to learn a different vocabulary. And I think that separates a lot of students. If you are not willing to do the work, to actually by rote memorize other words for things, I mean vocabulary, then I think you should probably give up on ever being able to speak or understand a foreign language. You have to do that. So that's so obvious. I feel a little bit sorry for a kid who wants to say, he wants to speak Spanish, he wants to know Spanish. So he goes and buys a Spanish-English dictionary. Well, that's fine. You can look up word by word, but vocabulary is just the beginning. That's one of the reasons that I skip that altogether, I think, because you could know 5,000 Spanish words for English words and still not be able to speak Spanish because of the what is not so obvious. You have to know the grammar, etc. All right, now I'm jumping around a little bit. I put a wavy line underneath what you just wrote. If you're going to put that in your notes, and I put a wavy line underneath that because it's kind of separate. I've given up on trying to convince you that language is amazing. If you do not accept it by now, I think whatever more evidence I would offer, I don't think it would work. But I have been trying to prove to you that language is amazing. Well, one other thought now in the linguistics section, 7.2 or 3, page 7.2 or 3, I think, is that language does not depend upon writing. A language never has to be written down at all, and still it is a language. Now the two are obviously bound together, but when a linguist talks about language, he's not talking about a writing system. If I had time, I don't want to do it now, but if I had time, I could take a very well-known English sentence or speech and write it out in a different writing system. And it would still be English. I just would have changed the writing system. Maybe I'll do that later, I don't know. All right, now, I'm jumping around here. Now I'd like you to go back to the chronological survey, which is the, I believe it's the 18th section, page 18.2 or 3, if you're keeping your notes. And there we are, this will be quick, there we're in the classical period. We dealt with the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and now the Phoenicians, letter C, A, B, C, Phoenicians, a very important ancient people, and there's lots to be said about the Phoenicians if this were a history class, but it's not. It's the humanities. So what did they leave us that we still treasure, that is classic? Well, they were able to make a certain color of dye, which is important, and other things as well. But wow, the alphabet. Our alphabet is based on their work more than anybody else's work. Now, it didn't come to us pure and simple. I believe it didn't have any vowels. It was just consonants. But our alphabet, and I've used it. The Phoenicians are so present here because there it is. This is the work of the Phoenicians. All of this would not be possible if it weren't for the Phoenicians. Well, anyway, the thing about our alphabet is it is sound-based. We've got symbols for sounds. Not all alphabets are like that. Some alphabets have symbols for ideas or symbols for consonants. In the modern world, there are alphabets like that. Chinese, Japanese. I'm not an expert enough on this to say more than that. But our alphabet is very effective and very useful. I should tell you that the alphabet used for Arabic and Urdu is also sound-based. Now, one of the things interesting about that is their alphabet is intended to be written from right to left, which is lovely for a left-hander like me. Because that way you could write without dragging your hand through the ink. I've thought about that often. Why would that be? Were the scribes of that time left-handed? I don't know. But in any case, the Phoenicians left us, they are the principal influencers on our alphabet. So thank you, Phoenicians. And in the next video, I'm going to go on as quickly as that to the Egyptians.